The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. Hi, I'm Innie, Dom B. Outie, Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Severance Season 2, where we will discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings, and oh boy, does this show have layers and meanings, of this TV show on Apple TV+. Joining me today on the panel are Jeff Haecker. Hey, Jeff.
Dom.
And Andrew Hermiz. Andrew H. Hey, Andrew.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. So, folks, remember to like the Secrets of Movies and TV Shows on our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuest Media. Retweet us on X, where we're at SQPN. Leave us comments wherever you find us on social media. We love to, and we're going to want to have lots of discussion about this, obviously, after we're done here. This is going to be lots of online discussion of the show. And also, if you're not subscribed, be sure to follow the Secrets of Movies and TV Shows in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, on your favorite podcast app. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/StarQuest Media, where make sure to subscribe, hit the bell to get notifications of new episodes. Now, I want to start with a recap. I'm going to recap everything as quickly as I can, given the nature of things. And then let's dive in, because there's so much to talk about. I don't want to spend a lot on the preliminaries, but let me give you a recap of Severance. And obviously, as always with the show, it's spoiled. Like, if you haven't seen season 1 or 2, you should, go watch them first and then come back. So
sever yourself now and then come back when you finished.
That's right. All right, here's the recap. Severance is a psychological sci-fi thriller about Mark Scout, an employee at Lumon Industries, who undergoes a mysterious procedure that splits his work and personal memories into separate consciousnesses, his Innie and Outie. At work, Mark leads a small team in the cryptic macro data refinement department, where none of them fully understand what they're doing. As the Innies begin to question their reality and seek freedom, the Outies remain oblivious to the suffering of their workplace selves. Mark's journey intensifies when a new hire, Helly, violently resists her severed existence, and an old colleague, Petey, warns him about the truth behind Lumon. Most of that's season 1, okay? Season 1 ends with the Innies breaking into the outside world, using a covert activation switch, making shocking discoveries. Helly is actually Helena Egan, daughter of Lumon's founder, the guy running Lumon. I think the founder was like a long time ago.
Yeah, the 1800s.
Irving uncovers a forbidden relationship, and Mark realizes his supposedly dead wife is alive and working at Lumon. Season 2 deepens the mysteries, revealing more about Lumon's sinister experiments, including multiple versions of severed individuals like Mark's wife, Gemma. The team explores hidden departments and collaborates across divisions to expose the company. Mark and Helly's relationships develop. Their relationship develops even as they battle inner conflicts and the manipulations of the powerful executives of the company. The season ends with a desperate rescue mission, ethical reckonings, and a growing rebellion, leaving the fate of the characters and the future of Severance uncertain. So that's the dramatic retelling of of the 2 seasons. So I want to start with just getting your overall impressions of the show. And Andrew, why don't you start? What is your overall feeling about Severance, the show?
My overall feeling is that it's one of the better TV shows that's on right now. Just to put it simply, there's really, in a sea of content saturation, there's very few shows that really stand out. I mean, there's a lot of shows that are kind of like, I would say, like hit the zeitgeist in sort of a viral way, like White Lotus, I think, is kind of one of those shows. Mm-hmm. A lot of reality shows are like that these days. But as far as like good writing, cinematic storytelling, sort of like inventiveness, You know,
Yes.
a lot of TV shows, I think pretty much every TV show now looks like a movie because like the budgets have gone up. They make less episodes per season. You know, we know like a lot of movie stars are now TV stars. They're kind of interchangeable. So this sort of show being, I think it's unique again on Apple TV, which, you know, a streaming platform that now is one of the big dogs, I guess you could say. But, you know, when season 1 of Severance came out, it was, you know, like, oh, this streamer with shows on it that they never publicize or really spend any money marketing. And, and, you know, but Severance kind of was the one show that, you know, came out of that stood out and is now like on the Mount Rushmore of Apple TV shows. Because it stood on the laurels of its great writing and performances and how unique the show is. You have a mix of like really talented actors that we recognize, like Adam Scott and Christopher Walken, John Turturro, but then you have all these no names as well that stand out, like Britt Lauer and you know, the actor who plays Milchick and so on, and pretty much the rest of the cast is a bunch of no names, or names we're not familiar with. So I think it has like that blend of like, you know, where the talent really stands out, the writing stands out. It's doing sci-fi, but in a grounded way. It's doing like the you know, the sort of split personality thing, but you know, in a very different and dramatic and sort of relatable. You know, it's relatable, it's palatable. The drama is earned. It's you know, it's all those things. So I think, and it has the twists and turns of like what's going to happen next week, and I can't wait for, you know, hopefully we don't wait 3 years for season 3. It looks like we're not going to with how big it is now. But for me, again, I think it's the probably the best show that's still airing right now. Because I haven't had a show like that just has gripped me week to week like this for a while. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about it.
How about you, Jeff?
Yeah, and I'll echo a lot of what, I agree with a lot of what Andrew said, so I won't retread. But one of the best things about this show is I love a mystery box show. I love Lost. I loved some of those other kind of mystery box shows, and this has been a great ride the last 10 weeks, or really the last couple of years, kind of waiting for this. But especially I watched the last season, I think a year later, so because I hadn't really heard about it, and then I heard about it and watched it. It was great. But the mystery box aspect is what I really like, and getting to talk about it week to week, try to figure things out, be proven very, very wrong, and, you know, maybe getting some hints of being right. And it's just a fun, you know, week to week discussion that I've had on various, you know, platforms with various people. And yeah, the mystery has been great. I hope there's, you know, I think they do have a plan. I think I've read they have a 5-season plan, maybe. I kind of hope they do have an answer to what's in the mystery box, because even though I love Lost, there were some, you know, maybe they quite didn't know what was in the mystery box when they started
J.J. Abrams.
Even though I love it, there still were some things unanswered. So I kind of hope that there's some answers that they have and aren't just like, well, we set this thing up, what are we gonna, you know, now we have to figure out what we're gonna answer. But yeah, this show is great. Yeah, it's one of the best things on TV right now, and yeah, it'll be a long wait, and, you know, I wish I could sever till the next season, but I can't yet. So, but yeah, it's a great show.
Dan Erickson is not J.J. Abrams. I'm pretty sure. J.J. Abrams, you know, famously the guy who made Lost and lots of other things. Like, he loves the mystery box, including not necessarily revealing everything that's in it, not giving you the answers to all your mysteries. That's one of the things that bugged me about Lost and some of the Star Wars stuff and all that sort of thing. So I won't go too far there. I love Lost. I love Severance. You mentioned entering the early days of Apple TV Plus. Like in 2021, when this came out, the only thing Apple TV Plus was really known for was Ted Lasso, which had hit right at the beginning of COVID. And that that hit at a very key cultural moment. And I think Severance does too. And partly because, the big conversation we all talk about is the work-life balance. Like this idea is how do we balance our life and our work, and work seems to consume so much of our lives and our identities for who we are for a lot of people, not everyone necessarily, but for a lot of people. And then so Severance comes along and in a way illustrates that in this dystopian way, in this sci-fi way in the first season. And I really feel like there's like a division between the first, almost a Severance, between the first and second seasons, where season 1 is really about the weirdness of corporate life, the weird rituals, the weird way they want to pretend that we're a family and that we're there for more than, a job, and all the weirdness of being a work person versus, your private life person. And I feel like season 2 moves forward from that and really is embracing a different kind of weirdness, which is the weirdness of cults of personality, of sort of these associations that are about the betterment of man. And I'm really getting lots of Scientology vibes out of Severance and Lumon Industries in the second season. My family history includes a bizarre brief connection with Scientology when I was a kid. I've told the story before on podcasts about how my brother had asthma. The doctor recommended that he get breathing exercises as a kid because asthma wasn't really treated well back in the late 70s. And a family friend suggested that Scientology had the answers. So we started going to the Scientology place, and my mom would bring me along as the younger brother because, she didn't have a babysitter. And so they started having me do these educational things and testing me, and they wanted to take me away to put me in a school. And that's when my mom freaked out and said, nope, thank God. And it reminded me a lot of certain elements of this season with Miss Cobell and Miss Wong and some of that stuff. So I get the sense that this might be Hollywood has a certain people in Hollywood have a reaction against Scientology because Scientology is big in certain sectors of Hollywood. And I felt like there was some connections there. So it's interesting to see how the show is kind of expanding what it's talking about in this second season. The acting, as you mentioned, the performances are great. The production design, it lends so much to the show. So let's get into a lot of that. And I just wanted to highlight Adam Scott, who I previously knew only from Parks and Rec, really, as a comedic actor, really nails it in this show as playing these him and Britt Lauer playing these subtle different characters who are really the same person. Really amazing work there. So let's dig into some of the things about this. Let's talk about the big mystery of this season, which is Gemma, Mark, and Helly, and what's going on here with Cold Harbor. So they work in macro data. Mark and Helly work in macro data refinement, which is one of those weird, like nonsense phrases that companies come up with to define things. And they do this weird. They're doing this weird activity where on their computer screen they're using their feelings to move numbers on the screen into boxes to create these files. And we learn at the end of the season that what Mark is doing, as opposed to the others, I'm not even sure the others are actually doing anything, but what Mark at least is doing is creating personalities that they're, unbeknownst to him, installing into Gemma and putting her through these tortuous scenarios for some reason as a part of that. What do you guys think is going on with Gemma, with Cold Harbor, with the torture thing? What's Lumon getting at here? I just want to start. I want to start with my big questions, and then we can get to the rest of it. But what do you guys think? Andrew, do you have a theory?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's, again, one of the fun things of the show. And sometimes the most annoying thing about the show is like reading theories or coming up with theories and usually being totally wrong, or, you think you're going to get the answer to your questions in the next episode and they totally don't give you any answers. But
Right.
yeah, but as far as like the big question, like you're talking about, what Lumen's sort of what's their mission statement or their whole goal with this, and Cold Harbor being the sort of the again the big, like everything was leading up to it, right? So I mean, I think they give us enough clues as to, I guess, the idea behind it. And again, like Severance does very well. They'll answer a million questions in one episode, but give you a million more questions to ask. But
Yes.
yeah, but I think, with Gemma, especially, in the episode that focuses on her, that was like really brilliantly directed by the cinematographer of the show, who's getting her flowers, and deservedly so. We find out like it looks like every one of these rooms are, as Cobell would describe it, as her tempers and her fears, let's say, flying and going to the dentist, and ultimately, Cold Harbor. My theory for Cold Harbor before the finale was, because the whole point was like, oh, she's gonna die if Cold Harbor reaches 100%. I thought like, oh well, she's gonna conquer her, the fear of death. Like Lumen's making some product that's gonna eliminate the fear of death and every other fear, so that even if you're dying or about to die, you're not afraid in that moment. That was kind of like my thinking, but obviously we see that it's a crib, very much maybe even the same exact crib that we see Adam breaking apart when in that very dramatic moment after the miscarriage. So yeah, obviously we know that the whole point of Cold Harbor, or one of the major points, is like to see if the barrier sticks when faced with a major traumatic image or device. And that's why, and we learned that's why they had Gemma and Mark working in the same building, is like they wanted to see like, okay, they interact pretty much regularly enough. Let's see, are there any do we see any hints of them like maybe breaking that barrier?
Right.
And we see until all heck breaks loose at the end. For everything that happens at the end, the Cold Harbor was basically a success.
Yeah.
I think I've read this, I've heard this theory. I don't know if I believe it or not, but when Outie Mark is telling Innie Gemma to like come over here after she's after he comes into the room, like they're saying she trusts Mark because love transcends severance. That kind of proves that theory. I don't know about that. I think it's more of like, well, she's just a puppet and she just listens to her masters.
Right.
So maybe she just thinks this is another one of her masters.
This guy covered in blood is calling me across the room.
Exactly. Yeah. And then obviously that tender moment, right, when she leaves the room, you obviously see like, he instantly recognizes that that's Gemma, and then
right,
she instantly knows that's Mark. Ultimately, I think that again, the Cold Harbor thing, I think Lumen, and I think James, kind of explains it, in all the weird scenes that he's in with his daughter, that he wants to, like, he sees himself as a God figure. He sees Kier as God, and that he wants to take away the pain from this world. Right. And I think ultimately that's really what they're aiming for, their interpretation of that.
I think we saw hints of that with the birthing cabin in season 1, where they had that woman who was like the wife of a politician or something like that, if you remember, who came to give birth in that cabin so that she's severed, so that only her Innie knows the pain of childbirth, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's the idea, is that they're trying to sever people from pain and suffering. Yeah. So that anytime they have to go through any type of pain or suffering or trauma, they can sever it, and only that Innie has to suffer it as opposed to the Outie. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah. So I've had a lot of theories over the course of the show and over the course of the season. Like at one point I thought cloning because of the goats. And I think the creators have kind of said cloning would be boring or something like that. Like they're kind of, which it still could be involved with that. But, so I think what they're trying to do is Cold Harbor and Severance just as a whole, because I think the other MDR refiners, even the ones that were from the other office that we saw in that one episode, like I think they are actually doing similar things. But I think what makes Gemma so special and Mark so special is they have a personal connection from their Outies, have a personal connection, which it doesn't seem like any other Innie and Outie have that. And you can see that from the beginning, Gemma was set up, because if you look at in the flashback episode where you see kind of their relationship, you see they go to the fertility clinic and it's that Dr. Maurer. Yeah, he's at the fertility clinic. So it's like, and they're living in this Lumon state, which like a fake state that we don't exactly know what it all is. Named
Kier, I think something. Yeah.
Well, Kier is the city, but then it's like a PE, so it's like there's a fake state that they're in too.
Oh, okay.
So I think what they're trying to do is, so I think taking away the pain is one level, and I think that's maybe what they're trying to do is to sell Severance as a service. But I think there's a bigger goal, which is they need to be able to completely supplant a personality. And we can see from Mark and Irv, there is a little bit of bleed over, because Outie Irving he's painting the black hallway in season 1, and Mark Scout is shoving down all the pain and shoving it into the Innie, and the Innie may not experience it, but there is some bleed over, I feel like. And if they let it go too long, it'll eventually kind of rise up above the surface. But I think what they're trying to do with Severance is to be able to completely remove a personality altogether and implant another personality. Like maybe they're trying to download the consciousness of, maybe James Egan, or they're trying to recreate the consciousness of Kier Egan and put that into a body. But they need to completely sever a personality and make sure that nothing can leak through. And that's what Cold Harbor is, because there's not many things worse than the pain of losing a child, whether it's a miscarriage, whether it's losing a child, that's been born. It's one of the most painful things. And having Gemma try to assemble the crib is like you're trying to see if there's any bleed over from Outie Gemma into that. And I think ultimately they're trying to determine, can we actually sever somebody so completely that we can implant a personality? And I've seen the theories that maybe James Egan has a terminal illness or something, and they want to and he's trying to ultimately move his consciousness into into another body. And I've seen the theory that the board that we see hints of is actually like the digital consciousness of some of the Egan CEOs, or that they're maybe Kier somehow, because Kier, I want to say it was the 1800s that Kier was founded Lumon and his ether factories and whatnot. So I don't know that that's really possible that he would still be around in some way. But I think it's that they're trying to completely eliminate a personality and be able to supplant another, and be able to basically create like a digital immortality by being able to move body to body, which has been done in shows like Dollhouse and the 100, if anybody's seen those. So I'm getting vibes of that.
The actress who plays Gemma was in Dollhouse, so that's kind of interesting.
Right. Yeah. So I do kind of think that's my theory, is that they're trying to be able to be able to move someone's entire consciousness from one body to another, but they need to perfect it first. And that's what the Severance process has all been. Because I don't think it's just to remove pain, because with this cult of Lumon and cult of Egan, I feel like there has to be a higher goal than just wanting to eliminate pain. I think it's so that they can continue and like you said, kind of become gods of the world, whether it's Kier, whether it's James or whatever. But I think it's related to that, is shifting your consciousness from one body to another.
The central aspect of the show is this Innie versus Outie thing, this idea that they can sever, personalities or sever memories and a person into, and the show itself kind of treats them like they are two different people. We have that awesome, amazing scene at the end of the last episode. We have Innie Mark and Outie Mark communicating via camcorder to each other in the birthing cabin. which is a kind of symbolic birthing cabin of a birth of a new kind of combined person. And you have Outie Mark trying to convince Innie Mark, you need to help Gemma escape, this person who you have no feelings for, you have no connection to. You have to help her escape. And if you do, then I will do everything I can to make sure that we are reintegrated and you can live on. And Innie Mark is like, no, you don't care about me. I get her out. You're just going to go and live your life and I'm dead. And there's this whole thing like Irving died, because he left, he was fired, and Dylan was going to die because he resigned. And this whole idea that they're separate. And even like Dylan, Innie Dilling having an affair with his wife, who's Outie, like she's not cheating on you. It's you. I'm yelling from the Catholic seats back here, like you're the same person. What do you guys think of this dichotomy that they introduced in the show, and this idea that kind of split into two people, and the whole idea of Severance? I mean, what do you guys think of it?
It's brilliant. It's one of the things that I love most about the show, and I think a lot of people do, is, there's layers to it. There's like the obvious, sort of commentary on corporate culture, where like you're totally a different person at work than you are at home. Depending on how corporate the job is, you act a certain way when you're in the office. You you're guarded, or
if you've ever had your family come to work and you're weird to them, right. I get that. Yeah,
absolutely. So obviously it's definitely, it's even the unsevered people at Lumon are severed. Like that's sort of like Cobell and Milchek. I think they concentrated heavily, obviously in season 2 on how Milchek is dealing with, how the corporate overlords are treating him, and then him sort of like discovering his self-worth, and working on his demons. Right. Him, there's that really, funny and also really depressing scene with him and, Drummond, where Drummond is forcing him to use simple language, and, and then Milchek fighting that, right, and you really see the struggle, and then it harkens back to the scene where he's like looking in the mirror and trying to work on simplifying his language, but he can't help who he is, and he's fighting that. So I think it's cool, like that sort of allegory to the corporate work culture. Is obviously there, but and then you have the other layer of how do we look at this from a human and a soul perspective? Like if this technology ever existed, and you lived a totally different life, half the time while you're at work, are you the same soul? Are you the same person? Do you owe? Who owes the other? Again, that whole the scene you're just talking about in the finale, where between Innie and Outie Mark, it's like, does Innie Mark owe Outie Mark this sort of favor of like getting Gemma out, who's just Miss Casey to him, right? So, and Helly is like his Gemma, it's his whole world. So, it just introduces such a unique and sort of cool sort of question of humanity and the soul. And obviously we can get into a lot of the theology of that, and like you said, from our Catholic chairs here, but it just from a plot story standpoint, entertainment standpoint, there's just so much there you can work with, and I think the most amazing example of that was that scene with the camcorder and them going back and forth. Like, what a brilliant device, plot device that was, to sort of show how they can communicate to each other, without them ever being able to, be in the same room, obviously.
I was trying to figure out how they were going to manage that. And the camcorder was a brilliant way of doing that.
Yeah. And the birthing center and all that, the whole going in and out. Yeah. That was, that again, writing impeccable. So yeah, and then like, you know, however many seasons the show you know, is going to last, I think they do have endless possibilities with you know, with this sort of device. So it can go any sort of which way about it. But yeah, and then how the finale ends, and now that the, you know, a big cat is out of the bag, you know, how they're going to handle that is just
right.
a whole nother thing. So yeah, I love it. I love how the show is just they use that plot device from episode 1, and it's something that sort of drives the whole story.
The idea of it makes people like think of things like, you know, what is the culpability of one personality for the acts of the other? You know, that idea of if an Innie does something immoral, you know, or sinful, is the Outie responsible? Like, sort of, because you're still one person. And I have a note in our outline, you know, the catechism teaches the human person is a unity of body and soul. Like that body is like, you are your body. You're not just your mind or your soul inhabiting a vessel. My body is as much me as my soul and my mind are. And so, yeah, that's one person. Mark is one person. He's not two different people. Even, and we talk about, like, you know, work self, home self, but there's also the idea of, you know, split personality and psychological, you know, matters that come up. You know, this idea of, you know, is a person with multiple personality disorder culpable for the acts of the personalities, and that can be reduced. You know, you know, maybe they're not in full control of themselves. I mean, it's a good thing this isn't real and can't happen because it would raise a whole host of interesting and scary moral questions. So let's talk about Helena, because there you have an interesting matter. Helene, right, which was an interesting slip there. The idea of she's in on it. You know, the Outie is in on it. She knows what's going on and decides to go in and be, you know, under. And I feel like she has her own motivation. I really get the sense that she's going in not just for the purposes that Lumon and Jamie Egan want her to. I felt like she was looking for something in being able to be someone other than herself, including in that the Woes Hollow episode in the Ortbo, and before that we find out where she's going in not severed, pretending to be severed, and experiencing life as someone else. What did you guys think of? Well, Britt Lauer obviously had an awesome, you know, is awesome actress because she did such a great job at it, leaving clues without being obvious about it. You know, you go in retrospect, but just in general, Helena and Helly, what's going on there? Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think, yeah, it was interesting having, and I'd seen the theory from the beginning that the Helena, or that the Helly that we saw at the beginning of season 2 was in fact Helena, which turned out to be right because, you know, she woke up for the first time being, you know, starting to drown basically on the Ortbo, because Irv was trying to get Helly back. And so I think that I don't know that she buys into the Lumon cult aspect. I think she's seeing it as a way to get power for herself and potentially power to, you know, for whatever goals she has that we don't quite know. But I think she probably was raised in this cult, you know, in some fashion around it. I don't think she was quite in it as much as like Cobell and Miss Wong are, and, you know, in Milchek. But it seems like she wanted to have that relationship with Mark because she probably has never had a real relationship, probably not even a friendship with anyone. It's probably all been, you know, based around this cult, and, you know, her father being the CEO of Lumon and being in charge of the cult right now. Like, she's probably never had any kind of real relationship. So I think when she's kind of viewed how close Helly and Mark got, that she realized like, oh, there's a connection here, which led to her, you know, her and Mark having that relation on the Orbo. And I think she's wanting a connection that she's not getting anywhere else. So I think she has a goal outside of the Lumon, you know, cult or whatever it is. Like, she has to play along for now, but I think she kind of thinks when James is gone, then I'm in charge, and she can use that for. And I could see her being the one that wants to sell Severance as a service, because the senator in season 1, whose wife, or I think it was a senator, maybe a congressman, whose wife was severed I thought it was during the whole pregnancy, because she wanted, maybe not to have any pain or discomfort. Yeah. But I think they're wanting to expand Severance as a service so that they can sell it, and maybe Helly's more into that, and she wants the money, and she can, maybe use, when she takes over, she has absolute freedom, compared to, she's pretty much under her father's thumb, under, through Drummond. She's probably doesn't have much for herself right now. Like, she has to play, I think she's playing along until James is gone potentially, and then she'll eventually, have more freedom. So, but she sees Mark as kind of an interesting roadblock to that, because it's a real relationship, or she at least feels that it's as close as she can get. So I think that's why she was, trying to get into that relationship with both Mark Scout on the outside, because she met him at the Chinese place, but then she slipped up by messing up his wife's name, which was an interesting, now you say that, because in the cabin, Outie Mark said Helene instead of, Helly. So like, they both slipped up there. So it was kind of a nice, like, turnaround on that. But yeah, I think she's just trying to, like, get the power that she can, and she can use it for whatever she wants, which could be just monetary. She doesn't really seem to be, like, buying into the cult of Egan like everybody else is. At least.
What do you think, Andrew? Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think what confirms that is that scene with James and Helly in the finale, where James is showing favor to Helly over Helena, saying that he sees Kier in her.
Right.
So, so I think, you're definitely, onto something where, just the fact that Helena takes such an interest, in Mark, and the fact that she even agreed to do this experiment, like to sever herself, and, it just tells you that she can't stand her own life. She's, I don't think she did it for just the good of the company, for the good of Kier. I think there's obviously something deeper there. And, and the fact that she's probably had no real human interaction or intimacy is really she has that sort of jealousy when she realizes that Helly has this relationship with Mark, and, is maybe someone that she wants to be, or, at the very least, someone who's experiencing things that she wants to experience.
Helly lets her kind of experiment with being a real boy or girl, as like a sort of Pinocchio sort of thing. Like, she gets to experiment with that. Like the sterile atmosphere. Was it the last or second last episode where she, we see her wake up and go, the day and swimming and have breakfast, and this totally sterile home, like this cold, literally, like, and I love the production design. Again, we can talk about that in a second, but like this, it's literally cold everywhere, and it's so cold. And yet, when she gets to be Helly, she's fiery. She's, she's got passion and a drive, and ironically, that's who James. I keep calling him Kier. James is sort of, excited by his daughter being is this person, who's severed, maybe not even recognizing his own role and making his daughter into someone that he doesn't see this in. I thought that was kind of this interesting irony in the story. How James doesn't even see his own role in making his daughter this person he doesn't really, he really kind of has contempt for, clearly. So we have Helly. We have these doppelgangers at the Ortbo. I got to mention them because you also mentioned cloning, and for a while there, I thought, oh, maybe what's happening is when they go, when the Outies go into the elevator, they're not like switching brains. They're actually swapping out literal people, where they make the Outie unconscious, and they put in, and they make, put it in a separate person who is a clone of the Outie in there. And I thought clearly that's not the case now, because we've seen them, transitioning in this. But what were these doppelgangers? Do you think? Like, do you think there's more to it than just we're just being weird in this story? What do you got? What do you think?
I tend to think they were just being, you know, I was kind of on the same track of like, oh, is it a clone? Is it some kind of like, now that we saw the animatronic here in the finale, could be something there. I tend to think it's just, they just had random people far off that are relatively, you know, from a distance look the same, and they're kind of their shadows. So I don't know that there's much more there. I mean, there could be. And the whole Ortbo thing is interesting because because at first I was like, okay, they can trigger, like, did they just trigger the OTC and that's how they're out in this place? Or is it some kind of, you know, I've seen the theory is like, oh, they were in a simulation, like they were in a computer or something. I mean, we still don't really know, you know, but so I don't think that I don't think in that case that I think it's just they're, you know, probably have random people just pretending to be them. Maybe they have other Innies doing that, or maybe it's just they have other Lumen employees that kind of are the similar, you know, body shape. They can kind of look the same from afar. I don't know. I didn't really come up with anything there.
Yeah, that's kind of where I landed after that scene. Again, which hasn't been explained yet. Like that scene where we see like the macro data refiners, you know, like yeah. Like the ones who are watching, you know, the ones who are monitoring, you know, Mark and Helly and Dylan and Irv,
right?
They all kind of look like them. They all kind of look like doppelgangers. Like, I thought that was super weird. Like, wait, who are these people down in the basement that are like, you know, monitoring, you know, Mark and Helly and Dylan and
right.
Irv doing their work, and why do they kind of look like them? So I think. Again, yeah, I think at first it was like, oh, are these clones, or, you know, is this virtual? But I think I land more towards like those were probably just people that they dressed up and made to look like them, you know, to sort of act as these, you know, guides, you know, throughout this Orbo experience.
Okay, yeah, that just was bugging me. So. Let's talk about Mr. Milchick and Miss Wong. The young actress who plays Miss Wong is brilliant. I mean, she does such a great job of being this creepy distillation between little girl and adult, and it's unsettling. It's just as unsettling as Patricia Arquette's Miss Cobell. I mean, they're just so strange and so, you know, weird and almost robotic. And then you have Mr. Milchick, who, as you mentioned, really grows in this season. One of the aspects I thought about Milchick that was interesting was, as one of only two, I think he's only African-American actors, although I'm not quite sure of Zach Cherry's background, so you know, it's not really that important. But as an African American, he gets this award from the board, and thanks for his, you know, his work. And it's the paintings of Keir, but they've been sort of, I think the term they sometimes use is blackwashed, where they've changed Keir into a black man, and it's so patronizing, and you can see how disturbing it is to him, to Milchick, that they've given him these, and he's supposed to be grateful for this. And I think this sets Milchick on a road where, you know, by then he's still a company man at the end, but there's a difference in him, and I'm not sure what it is. Maybe you guys have an idea of what's going on with Milchick by the end. You know, we also get another one of Milchick's parties where he's dancing, which I thought was hysterical. It was so weird, so funny. But what do you guys think of Milchick's journey through this season and who he is?
Yeah, I think he's on the path to rebel against Lumen. I think he's going to kind of be one of the I've been joking that Cobell's kind of forming an anti-Lumen Avengers with Devin, and now, you know, probably Gemma and you know, maybe Irv and Bert and all these people. She's going to have this whole squad of people trying to take Lumen down, and I think we could see Milchick joining them down the road. But yeah, he's still kind of, you can see he's questioning things by the end, especially his whole little stand-up routine with the Keir animatronic.
Yes.
And at first I was like, okay, is that an
So good.
AI or something? But then it seemed like it was someone was like voicing, like someone was on the other side voicing it, live, and they were kind of talking down to him. So yeah, I'm very curious to see where but you can tell there's cracks starting to form with him.
Right.
Because he seems like he may not have been raised in the Lumen cult like Cobell and Miss Wong were, but he probably joined as a young man potentially.
With dance moves like that, he definitely was not raised.
Well, but I mean, you have the whole severed marching band, the choreography and merriment department. So maybe he was, he could have just, which is just
true.
so hilarious. Like they have a whole and I was a band kid, and I was just thinking like to sever somebody and make them be in band, and that's all they do. Like that's a lot of like, to wake up and be like, you're going to play an instrument and you're going to be this marching band, and that's your whole existence. I mean, it's hilarious, but it's also kind of sad. Like if, cause you have the different departments, but yeah, I think he's going to eventually break good and kind of join them in the kind of this. I think ultimately they're going to kind of the end game is taking Lumen down, and kind of reintegrating all the Innies potentially down the road. So I think he's going to kind of join them in down when we get there.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly hope that's what he does. Obviously, I'm rooting for Milchek to break out of the Lumen stronghold. But I can see it go either way for him. Definitely you see the cracks like you mentioned throughout the season, and other than Mark and Helly and the Gemma storyline just kind of being the beating heart of the show, I thought like Milchek was like an MVP of the season. I loved his character. I loved his arc. And I think what's interesting about his character is in this season is that, he's being really pushed to his limits, and he's being challenged, and he's questioning a lot of things about the company and how he's being treated. But at the same time, as soon as that loyalty is questioned, that he's questioning, to himself, like how loyal should he be to Lumen because of how they're treating him. He kind of sort of always doubles down. That's sort of his reaction, is like, I'm just going to be even meaner and more play by the Lumen playbook. And I'm going to prove to these people that, they can't. It's almost like he's kind of taking it as like Lumen's really testing him, and he has to pass the test, right? Like, they're like, no, I need to fight through this. And, because even in the finale, you're like, oh, like he almost says nothing in that last episode, but he brilliantly plays it. When you the show, a very obvious choice the show makes is that there's a lot of close-ups on the show.
Yeah.
A lot of the performances and a lot of the emotional beats of the story you see on these characters' faces. And then with Milchek, you see it all in his face when he's like, he's looking in the mirror in the bathroom and he's sort of, finding himself. But he comes out of that. You're hoping that he's going to come out of that and sort of join the Helly army with the marching band. But no, again, ultimately he again, we don't know. It doesn't answer it explicitly, but he found the strength to push over that vending machine, and and was ready to, he didn't know he was going to face rebellion, but he was ready to go after Mark, it looks like. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how his character again develops throughout the future seasons. But I can definitely see it go either way. It could totally be a tragic story where he just becomes consumed by, his role in the company, and Lumen props him up, to basically what, Cobell was thinking she was before they turned on her. Or I could totally see and hope that he just becomes a part of the rebellion and plays a key role in taking Lumen down.
We mentioned several times the cast. I just want to quickly name some of the big name actors that they've got to even play smaller roles. Like you get Robbie Benson as Dr. Maurer. You have Gwendolyn Christie as Lorne, who seeing, Captain Phasma taken down. Actually, I was yelling out, it's Brienne of Tar versus
Brienne of Tarth, exactly.
taking down the Hound. Like it was in that battle with Mr. Drummond in the hallway. I'm like, dude, you are done. Gwendolyn Christie, Sandra Bernhard. I was watching like, who is this Nurse Cratchit? Like, I'm like, she's totally out of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That's Nurse. And I'm like, that's Sandra Bernhard. I had to look her up. I'm like, wow.
I had the same reaction. I'm like, I know that face. But like, I can only remember her from like how she looked in the 90s. Because I feel like that's, I was very, she just brought back a lot of, memories from of the 90s when I realized who it was.
Right. And then, of course, the wonderful scenes with John Turturro, Christopher Walken, and John Noble, 3 great actors. And that dinner scene was fantastic. I love John Noble and everything. I mean, he's just fantastic. His best role was in Fringe, but because he was really crazy and awesome. But just a great interaction between Bert and Irving, which does that not sound like a lot like Bert and Ernie to anyone? But the great scenes between them. So we have this great cast, of secondary characters, and Patricia Arquette. And now we have to talk about, before we finish, we have to talk about Miss Cobell, because I mean, this is so important. We find out, and that scene where she goes back home to Salt Neck, I think it's called,
Salt's Neck,
in this beautiful, desolate Newfoundland town that they filmed it in. I mean, it was crazy with icebergs in the river. And we suddenly went from, I couldn't stand this woman, she was like this horrible woman, to being a completely sympathetic, maybe not completely sympathetic, but very sympathetic figure in Harmony Cobell, the inventor of Severance, which, wow, that turns everything on its head, doesn't it? So what do you guys think of the evolution of Harmony Cobell in this season?
Yeah, that was really interesting and really surprising. And that episode, I know, got a lot of criticism for detracting from kind of the main story. I kind of view it as table setting, like it's setting the table for, we needed to know who really get her background, because we really didn't know her background other than that she was, she worked at Lumon and then she got fired and whatnot. We didn't really know. So I think it was a necessary episode, and it was really interesting because, she goes to this town where you can get, which is the town where Keir, I don't know if it was his only ether factory, but it was one of his ether factories, and it's basically been destroyed by, it seems like they're not making ether anymore, or, and maybe the people around are still running the plant, because you can get ether with your coffee wherever you go there, in that diner. But you see, like, she was raised in this cult. So while she does have some culpability, you at least can see that, maybe she wasn't raised in the best way, because it seems like her mom was the true believer in the cult, even though this town has kind of been destroyed by it. Because she did the whole Wintertide Fellowship, which we found out earlier in the season was what Miss Wong is doing. Because at first I was like, is Miss Wong, is she Mark and Gemma's daughter somehow? Is she a clone? Is she severed? But you find out she's part of the cult, and that's what Cobell is too. And yeah, finding out she created Severance was really interesting. Like, it seems like because obviously it's that James took credit for her creation, and she thought she was getting, she was giving it to the glory of Keir by, not taking credit. But obviously they got what they needed, and as soon as she does something they don't want, they get rid of her. So, like, I think it's really interesting to see where she's going to go, because we still don't know really her motivation. Is she just trying to destroy it all because they took it away from her, or does she want to take it back over? I think it's really interesting to see.
Something occurred to me, by the way, and I'm probably late to this, realization. Cold Harbor, Salt's Neck is a cold harbor. Ether was used as an anesthesia to make you forget your pain. It was actually, it's one of the things it does, is it actually makes you forget your pain, as opposed to modern anesthesia, which just knocks you out. Which is kind of like what Severance is trying to do, which is so kind of interesting. Maybe there's something to that, that somehow Lumon has always been about making people forget the pain that's being caused to them or something along those lines. So interesting. But Harmony, Andrew, do you have thoughts on Harmony?
Yeah, real quickly again. Yeah, I think she's such another one of those characters where you don't know where it's going to land with her. And I love like how at the end of the penultimate episode of the season, remember that shot, that final shot of her with the fireplace just like blazing behind her. It's like,
yes.
Okay. Yeah. So is she not like, I think we agree we can't trust her now. I think they're giving us all the visual like clues that she has something
like the devil.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, they're not being so subtle with that. But again, in the finale, she's seemingly just a team player. She's very open about revealing all of the secrets, explaining, telling Mark and Devin, like, this is what's going to happen if Cold Harbor reaches completion. And this is how we're going to do this. And this is the plan. Mm-hmm. And so seemingly she's, she's a rebel, for the cause, but, obviously she probably has some personal vendetta and whether that's going to be align with, sort of Devin and Outie Marks, and even the Innie Mark and Innie Helly, with their sort of takedown of Lumon or desire for that is yet to be seen, and I think obviously will play, right. a big part of the story going forward.
She's so volatile, kind of a chaos agent, so you don't know really where she stands, and I think that makes it a very interesting character. And Patricia Arquette plays her so well. I mean, it's just so, even in interviews with if they have after each episode, they have a little behind the scenes thing. And when they talk to her in that, she's so much like Harmony in that. I'm like, is she acting? Like, right. Yeah. Is that really what she's like? So, I don't want to end without talking about the production design, because I feel like it's such an important part of the whole show.
Yes.
So the outside world, outside of the, Lumon, is icy, cold, and gray. It is always winter, never spring. It's Narnia under the White Witch. It's there's no color. Even like the homes are drab. Everything is the cinematography is so dark. And Lumon's severed floor itself is sterile but bright. It's so there's a brightness to it, and there's hints of color. There's green, and in their costumes there's color. In Helly's costume, she has like a blue sweater or something like that. But then I noticed as Irv rides away from the town of Kier on the train, there's a sunrise or sunset, whatever, but it's golden and the land is green. And it's like, as you get further from Lumon, the world returns to normal. So I thought that was kind of fascinating. You have the brutalist architecture of the corporate headquarters and this really sterile modernist architecture of the Egan mansion. Then you have all of this 80s era technology, and all of the cars are deliberately, from the 70s and 80s. I read an article about how they chose them so that it was unsettling and you couldn't figure out when this was or set it in time. The only thing that really sets it in its time is the smartphones. The people have smartphones, and they're not iPhones, no iPhones at all, which is really unusual for an Apple TV show. Like, it's weird to say, but all their productions, the good guys all have iPhones and nobody has iPhones. And it's like, why? And so I just think that production design is a fascinating aspect of this show. What do you guys think of it?
Yeah, maybe no iPhones because they want to associate iPhones with good people or good things, and this town is not very. It doesn't seem very a really nice place to live, because it's very, they have the company housing that Mark lives in, and I guess his sister and her husband still live in the town too. But I have a lot of questions on the world outside of Lumon, because it is a separate state of some sort, because it's PE, which. In the first season, I kind of glossed over. I was like, "Oh, is it just I just thought Pennsylvania or something." But then I was like, "Wait, no, that's so." Yeah, it's definitely weird. And as you're talking, I was like almost wondering, could this be, because it's almost like it's a little bit of an alternate world or something. So I was almost thinking, like, could something like a nuclear disaster have happened and caused some kind of nuclear winter that's affected this area? So I don't know, but yeah, the design is like, it is beautiful, but yeah, like you said, it's very stark, very sterile inside Lumon, and yeah, it's like, I don't know that I would want to live anywhere near this town. Like, I'm from the South, so I mean, I don't like it burning hot all the time, even though it is a lot of the year. But I also don't want to live in the land of ice and snow like this.
Oh, I live in the land of ice and snow, and I don't want to be. Andrew, what do you think of the production design with the film background like yourself?
Yeah, no, obviously it's a masterclass. And yeah, obviously the intriguing setting of this town is still a mystery. Why is it always winter, and all those sorts of things. But and then, like, obviously the equator exists in this world. So there is a functioning equator and sun and earth, that sort of, we're assuming, goes around the sun, just like ours does. So, and then obviously with like you mentioned, the train scene, we kind of see that glowing sun. So why is this town the way that it is? Is Lumon controlling the weather? What's going on? But just aesthetically itself, it's like, is there a reason? Like, is this just like, they're just establishing the aesthetic of the show to be this way, and it's sort of supposed to play with our minds, or is there a real deeper meaning behind it? That's
right.
That's always something we're questioning. It's like what are the goats? Well, they're just goats. They're weird cult sacrifices. It's like it doesn't seem like it's deeper than that. But I would say also the set itself of The Office is like, it's amazing how they can make a very like fluorescent lit, very clean, corporate, stale looking office just be so cinematic. Obviously the showing a great example of that in the finale with the red lights blaring on the alarm, and then the hallway scene. The cinematographer, she said that final scene was her favorite shot of the whole series so far. And if you kind of notice, I don't know how many people notice it, but I definitely noticed it with my being a film buff. Like the last scene was shot on film, or at least it was transferred to film, because you can kind of see the film grain, and then you kind of felt that with the music choice that they chose for the last song being from I think it's a 60s song, and it gives that sort of the Graduate sort of ending vibe, or even like 400 Blows, or a lot of these iconic endings. So the choice, like Ben Stiller, obviously, and Jessica Gagne, I think is her name, the cinematographer.
Yes.
They consume a lot of stuff. They consume a lot of great film, and you can tell they're buffs too, because there's a lot of choices throughout the show that they make. The way they choose to shoot, like just the way they choose to visually show that they're switching from Outie to Innie in the elevator. It's the
Hitchcockian effect. Yes,
exactly. Yeah. So just a lot of those things like that the show does so well, and they use mostly practical effects, like that scene where with Mark and Gemma, and it's going through the wires and into the basement, and you see like the evil doctor in that dark room with the weird doppelganger guys monitoring them. That was all practical, which is insane, So to put in the effort to do that is definitely commendable, and you don't see really done, especially in TV or even in film these days. So big props to everyone behind the show.
You mentioned that final scene running down the hall on film to evoke that nostalgic, but there's also an internal connection, because the episode Chikai Bardo, which is the flashback to Gemma and Mark's relationship pre-Lumon, was also shot on 35 millimeter film,
right,
to give it that classic home video feel. And so they're making that connection between that final shot, and Helly and Mark S. and Gemma and Mark Scout, that they're making that visual connection. And I love the fact that they said it was shot on 35 millimeter 2 perf versus 4 perf, which is, I think, the number of holes in the sprockets.
Yeah.
To feed it, because it gives a different texture than the more common anamorphic 4 perf. And I'm like, just the amount of thought that they put into the details, it really comes across. I love that. So it was fantastic. Like, just the breakdown of the production design. Any other thoughts before we wrap things up on stuff that you think we should have covered, or just any other bits? Jeff, do you have anything?
I think one of the biggest questions for me is about reintegration, because we don't really know we saw Petey, but he was kind of an incomplete reintegration. And we saw Mark kind of getting flashes of the Innie life and the Outie life. And I thought, okay, it's going to be a process, and by the end he'll be reintegrated. But then obviously we see that he's not, because he can still be, he still has the Innie Outie separation. Right. And when they did the camcorder thing in the cabin. So, and Ragabi, the doctor, kind of she left the show, or, left in the season. I don't think she's gone forever. I think she'll be back. But I'm very curious, like, it seems like I don't know if they, that they're just setting stuff up for future seasons. With the amount of detail in the show, I tend to think, yes, that they're just kind of setting things up. But, ultimately, like, we don't know what a reintegration looks like, because Cabell kind of says, we can complete your reintegration, but we don't know does that mean that, like, Innie and Outie Mark become one kind of consciousness together again,
right?
Where they, it's one kind of two minds. It's almost like the trinity of, multiple persons, one nature kind of thing. Or, not anyway, that's
yes, like, we know you're not being a heretic.
Yeah. So I'm curious what that will end up being, because I think that's one of the biggest questions for me is what does reintegration look like, a successful reintegration? Because I think Petey was one of the first, and he obviously wasn't successful. So I'm curious to see kind of what that will look like in the, I'm sure we'll get there in the future, but.
And what will that mean for Mark and Helly and Gemma?
Right.
Yeah. How about? Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. I think it's funny that Outie Mark, by the end, I mean, you can tell he doesn't want to reintegrate anymore. I mean, obviously he was so gung ho about doing it, and then realizing that Innie Mark has like this whole other life where he's in love with Helly, like he doesn't want to mix that up with Gemma. Like, he just wants to live his life with Gemma and not have anything to do with whatever life he had at Lumon. And obviously Innie Mark doesn't want to be fully reintegrated, because that'll be the end of him. So I thought that was again another like brilliant thing they did in the story, where we thought like, oh, by the end of the season, he's probably going to be fully reintegrated, and it's going to be this big mess. Like he's going to be in love with Helly. He's going to be in love with Gemma. Like, what's going to happen? Helena's going to be reintegrated too. And then like, what's she going to be like? But no, they kind of took us on this totally different turn, and yeah, they can go so many ways with this. And yeah, that's again, it gives you those sort of endless possibilities and the sort of tension and drama that the show brings. And it'll be interesting to see how they handle that.
They always take the less obvious path, and I like that. The harder path to tell the story, which is fine by me, and kudos to them for that, because that makes for a better story overall.
I think some of the, like, I always like, and this has been said by a lot of people, but like a lot of the best writing is like, just in TV especially, write yourself into a corner. Yes. And then try to figure it out for the next season, Right. That's sort of the best way. A lot of times it's really an awesome way to do it, to approach it.
Yep. So excellent. So another success for Apple TV Plus. I mean, Silo we talked about recently, Severance, Ted Lasso is coming back for another season, which I'm kind of looking forward to. So it just, man, there's as you mentioned, there's a sea of content out there, but there's some gems in that sea. And so it's going to be interesting to see where we go from this. So we're going to wrap things up here. There's so much more we could say, but we we don't have the time. So we'll sever ourselves now and come back in season 3 and pick it up from there. Before we go, we do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of movies and TV shows, including Susan D., Andreas S., Jess K., Megan F., and Patrick W. No, they're not severed people. That's just how we refer to them. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of movies and TV shows and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. Now, I always say give us feedback on our shows when we come to the end, but I really want to get your feedback, your theories, your ideas, because I'm reveling in all of that stuff, and that's all we've got until they come back with season 3. So we would love to get your feedback on Severance. You can do that by going to the show page at sqpn.com/secrets or the StarQuest Facebook page. Send an email to secrets@sqpn.com. Join us on our StarQuest Discord community where we have great conversations about all the shows that we have here at sqpn.com/discord. And until next time, Andrew Hermiz, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Severance season 2.
Thanks for having me.
And Jeff Haecker, thank you as well.
So,
and once again, I'm Don Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the secrets of movies and TV shows on StarQuest. Here's another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy. The Secrets of Sacred Art. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found or at starquest.fm/art.